again, we talked about individual variability, but let's just say you need 8 hours every night. And conceptually, if you don't meet that 8 hours, then you build up a debt. So if you're only getting 6 hours a night, you now have 2 hours of debt built up. If you go Monday to Friday, that's 5 days. Now you have 10 hours built up, right? Two
Yeah.
hours every night
Yeah.
becomes 10 hours. And if you then sleep in on a Saturday and you get, let's just say 10 hours of sleep, you've paid back 2 of those hours, but you still have 8 hours left to go.
And my body knows.
Yes. So conceptually, that's the idea of accumulating sleep debt. I do stand in the camp that believes that that does accumulate over time. We do think that you can pay back some of that debt on the short term, right? So what you lost, like you said, this past day or this past week, maybe this past month, you should pay that back with getting extra sleep, or we call sleep extension. We don't think that you can surplus and bank more and that you can pull from that in the future. But we recognize that if you've got insufficient sleep, that if you extend it over a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, then you will see benefits in your reaction time, in your fatigue levels, in your performance outcomes. And so we do recommend that as a tool, especially if you know that you're going to have a day where you're going to have sleep loss. So it's a strategy, for example, if you know, okay, in a week, I'm going to have a project and I'm not going to be getting enough sleep that night. Then what you can do in the days leading up to it is getting sufficient sleep, but arguably even more, so that we know when it gets to that project, the decrements that you'll experience tend to be less robust than if you went into it with just, say, that was 5 hours.
So, what evidence do you have that sleep debt is a real thing? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
So what I've dedicated my career to is trying to understand how to pay back sleep debt with sleep extension interventions. So what that means is typically I'm working with a number of collegiate athletes where many of them are not getting what they need, because when we start these studies, many of them have high fatigue levels. They are reacting slowly. We often see lapses in their judgment and their ability to ultimately perform and function, which is what they consider their baseline. But then when we actually challenge them by paying back some of that debt by getting additional hours, when we monitor the differences that can make over multiple weeks, that's where we see there's improvement in the reaction time. Their fatigue levels drop. Their performance on the field improves. And so we recognize what has changed in this is trying to pay back some of that accumulated debt when the rest of their training has been